Hey everyone, Josh here. So today we had our very first heavy frost. So it was about -4 overnight. So just doing a few things, looking over the Touareg, just making sure the Webesto is kicking on, making sure the nice heated seats work good. But the Touareg, my 06, has always kind of been missing something. And that something's a heated steering wheel and accessories. So I'm not sure how you spec out these cars. So my 04 is a fairly base model V10 TDI, and it had a heated steering wheel, whereas my 06 is fairly nicely specced out, but it doesn't have the heated steering wheel. But here in Canada, it is really nice. The silver one that I did a few videos on a while ago, it had a heated steering wheel. Yeah, it was really nice on those cold mornings. So we're gonna try and swap heated steering wheel and hopefully required parts into my non-heated vehicle. So I pulled this setup out of the wreckers. So this came out of a base model VR6. Quick and easy way to tell if it's a heated steering wheel or not will be the single seam at the 6 o'clock position, whereas my current one's got a seam at the 5 and 7, or 5 and 7, and 10 and 2. So that's how you know it's not a heated steering wheel. My airbag, so it's got a button back here which shuts off your lights on your airbag lights, and then you got a button over here. So this is the heated steering wheel button, but obviously if you don't have the heated steering wheel, it's not going to work. So the interesting part is getting this out from the scrapyard. I like just browsing through scrapyard, seeing what they've got. So I've got this from there. The issue is you need to be able to turn the wheel 180 to be able to get this airbag out. So if you're not comfortable working with airbags, sorry, but this isn't going to work. But the issue at a lot of scrap yards is, first, they pull the battery, and second, they don't include the keys. So I learned the hard way. If you don't have power to your underneath your seat here, if you stick your Touareg key in, it's going to go in there, it's going to turn, but then it's going to auto lock your key in, and then you won't be able to get your key back unless you get power to the Touareg somehow. So that's one thing to just kind of keep on mind when you're at the scrapyard. The other thing is the base model VR6 had the adjuster underneath here to get the steering wheel down and out all the way, whereas mine's the electric. So you're gonna have to have power depending on which car you're pulling this out of. And then, yeah, as I said, you're working with airbags, so you're gonna have to make sure the power is shut off to get the airbag out of here, because you don't want it to blow up in your face. So let's actually get started here. So I'm just going to kind of include here, so there's a forum post that I kind of went off of at the scrapyard, make sure I got the parts I need. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. He swapped a heated steering wheel into a T2 Touareg, so the newer style. But I use that to make sure I've got the right parts, and also the VCDS coating. So I just want to, I'll put the link in the description. Thanks him for that. And then the other thing is too, if you're getting this out of a scrapyard, the other issue that I mentioned with the key getting stuck in your ignition, the only reason you need to put that in there is to get the steering wheel lock unlocked. If you don't have 12 volts to jump to the battery, if you're really strong, you can reef the steering wheel and it should unlock, or it should kind of skip and grind and make some really bad noises. But we're not using that steering lock, and hopefully the scrapyard doesn't mind you kind of wrecking that lock. But yeah, it's just kind of important point to add there. Okay, so up first we're gonna get this column apart. So you got one screw here, one screw here, and then there's one or two from underneath, I believe. So we'll do that here now. Okay, as always, working with 20-year-old Volkswagen plastics are always fun. So this one, you just kind of pull it out like that. It's just got a clip inside of there. This one here, same kind of deal. And then that should pop up away from the bottom shell. I'm gonna use two hands here, but that should pop up. We'll get it up out of the way, and then this bottom, I think, should pop down. Okay, up next is the frustrating part of getting the airbag out. So with the battery disconnected, you've got a little hole there and a hole over here. So a little flat screwdriver, you gotta go in and then turn, and then same thing on the other side, you go in and turn. So you gotta turn towards the center of the column in the two spots, and then this should pop up. So it'll make a little more sense when I've got it out of here, but this is probably the most frustrating part of the whole thing. Okay, I'm gonna film this as quick as I can so I don't have a bomb in my hand any longer than I have to. So that's your things you're disconnecting from your steering wheel itself. And then that orange connector at the very bottom there, you can see the little spring tab. Just push that up with your finger and then off comes your airbag. I'm just going to film this quick here again. So flat stubby screwdriver with vice grips clamped on, so you only need to go in right about where my thumb is. It's not very far in. And you're basically popping it in there and turning that. So that moves the spring down here and gets it to unlock from here. So it's a little frustrating. The one at the scrapyard I'd made an absolute mess of trying to get this undone, but this one went better. The other thing is store your airbag with the airbag facing up, so basically the opposite of this, so that way if it does accidentally go off, you don't have a projectile. So I'm going to set this outside here and then carry on with taking this apart. Okay, so up next we're taking the steering wheel, the old one, out of here. We're going to get the clock spring assembly out of here and we're going to compare it on the bench. So just before disassembly, I'm just going to mention, so this is what holds your steering wheel on, so it's a big triple square, 12mm triple square. It said you can reuse this 5 times. It's got a little bit of blue Loctite on it, so I'm not too afraid with that. I'll put the torque spec down here somewhere. But we're going to remove that, get this wheel off. But one thing I'm going to mention is this clock spring. So just like any spring, you can only spring it so far before it gets sprung. So however you take it apart at the scrapyard, try and I guess mimic what you're doing here. And if you're buying it off eBay, hopefully it's centered. I don't know much about them other than I know they can break. So I've got my wheel, I'm turned right just the first turn. So that's how I took it apart. So I'm going to do the same thing here, but we're going to get this off, we're going to get it on the bench and then see the comparison. So I'm already seeing the clock spring. Factory one doesn't have the 2 pins here for the heated element, so we're going to need at least the clock spring. Okay, nice and easy, we're going to get this whole assembly off in one shot. So they just so happen to have a set screw on the bottom side of the steering column, and you do have a hole that just so happens to line up with it. There, that's loose. Slide it towards you a little bit, and then you've got this connector here, this kind of holder, and this connector down here. Okay, I missed this bottom one, so that would be for your wiper stock, but same kind of deal, just push in. Normal locking one, also normal locking one. This whole support just kind of clips on there, and then your main assembly, same kind of deal. It clipped in over here, and then it's got the actual connector on the back side. So now, there we go. Alright, so let's do some comparisons. So the wheels, non-heated, heated. So we've got the element power, and then this would be the switch signal power, whatever you want to call it. The airbag, so you can reuse the original airbag. Try and be careful here. So I only had to unplug this one from my clock spring, whereas now the heated switch is going to go to this one as well. So now we've got 2 connectors. Now to this column. So we've got my old one, we've got the new one from the wreckers. So clock spring is obviously different. It's not going to pick it up, but I've got 2 pins inside of there. This one's blank. We flip it over. Let's go this way here. The signal stalk, or that's the wiper stalk, that's the same, but this top one here, so part number, the 7L6953-549J and 7L6953-549H. So these are different, so you're going to need, at minimum, this back controller and your clock spring. They both have subs up. I'll put a screenshot here on the heated versus non-heated. But yeah, this is even a newer style than this one, but this has the heated element in it. Got all the same pins, but there must be something inside that board that's different. I'm not about to take it apart because it is what it is. So everything else looks the same. And then one thing I noticed, so if you do buy it from online and you don't think the clock spring's centered, that thread talked about counting clicks. So if you push down on that button, you get a click and then it stops. You push down again, click and then it stops. So you can kind of count. It was something like 16 clicks one way and 30, I think it was 16 clicks either way for a total of 31 or 32 clicks. So you can just kind of make sure that your clock spring's centered before you go and break it. But anyways, we're going to get this new assembly put back together, and then we'll skip to the coating, because if you can take it apart, you can put it all back together. Okay, one thing I'll mention, I should have mentioned before disassembly, but you've got a tiny little mark on your steering column. I've kind of highlighted with white paint there, and then you've got that horizontal line on the steering wheel itself. So you want to make sure that's lined back up, so that way your steering wheel is the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, so now we're going to tighten it down, and we'll pop the airbag back in. Alright, so we're all back together. Battery's not hooked up yet, so I'm just going to mention, when you're hooking up the battery, don't have your head in this area in case the bag does decide to go off, so that's just common sense. Yeah, you don't want to get hit with an airbag. Alright, so I've got an interesting issue here now, so start the car up. Okay, that was already there. So you just hit the button there, steering wheel symbol comes up, and my steering wheel gets nice and warm. So there was no coating needed on my car. The issue I've ran into here now is my steering column adjust doesn't work. So I think this talks to that main controller through CAN bus or LIN bus or something, and that controller isn't programmed, because as I said, I got it out of base model VR6, so that had the manual handle down here and not the buttons. So we're gonna go on to VCDS. I'm just gonna cover off the coating in case you have to do it, and then figure out the coating to get this steering column adjust to work again. Okay, so I'm refilming this. I lost, or the audio didn't record. But we're gonna do some coding here. I've already done it, but steering wheel, so address 16 or group 16, you're gonna go to coding, and then you click on this group here. So make sure you take a picture of it before, and I would probably take a picture of this before you disassemble everything, so you know what it was originally. But anyway, so heated steering wheel, so you've got three options, so not installed, via seat switch and via the multifunction steering wheel button. So I think you're going to want it as a 2, so that way this button up here turns it on and off. Multifunction steering wheel, it was the same steering wheel. I don't know how many different options there are, but the one I got it out of is the same, so I'm not going to touch that. And the steering column adjust, so this was a 1 originally, so that last digit was a 1. So now we're going to change that, or it's changed to a 2 right there. And then yeah, so the question mark is the one you want to edit. So for a heated steering wheel, third digit from the right is the one you want to change to a 2. So now that works as it's supposed to. So X out of that, X out of that, and then you go to measuring blocks, and then go to 7. Oops. So it's got heater status off and temperature. So I'm not sure if it's because of the battery voltage or if it just has to be running. but this will turn on and off without that running. But as soon as I have the car running, it seems to stay on all the time. So it's going to get up, I believe, 31 degrees Celsius is as hot as it's going to get, and then it should cycle on and off and keep it at that temperature. So 25, I can't quite feel it, but when it was up closer to 29 or 30, you can feel the warmth. But that's going to be the end of that. So then I decided I'd take apart my old assembly in case you have to source these parts on eBay. I just got them from a wrecker. So steering wheel, column switch, and clock spring was $45. So it's a pretty nice mod for $45 and a couple hours of time. But here's the clock spring. So it just has little tabs that lock itself onto this assembly, and then the electrical connectors just push into the main controller. The steering column, you can take it apart as well to get the stalks off of that main controller, but I don't have the right size Torx. I've got T7 and T10, so it's an in-between, so it must be T8, I believe, is the size. I don't really get into the small stuff very often, but T8's what you need if you need to get this apart. And then, yeah, you can source your parts, and then you should be set. So hopefully this convinced you to put a heated steering wheel in your Touareg, because I think it's going to be a pretty nice modification. Okay, I just thought I'd show this part here too. You might run into it where you've got a steering angle sensor code or not calibrated. I believe it's in the clock spring or that center console piece that we changed. But basically, if you go to ABS brakes, it'll be under there as a fault code. Let this thing think. So coding, so 40168. So steering has to be dead straight ahead. It says you have to turn it all the way one turn one way, one turn the other way, and then you're sitting on a flat ground. And then yeah, the steering's perfectly centered. Basic settings. If we go to here, you can go to adjustment of steering angle sensor. And then we go done, go back. So I've got this ESP fault, so that's gonna be the next spot I look at, and then the wheel speed sensor, I've got a broken ABS sensor. But to see if that wheel angle sensor is working correctly, you should be able to go to this and then turn your steering wheel. There. So I guess the next thing I'll be looking into is this ESP code.